at the appointed hour. Ray has taken attendance and we do have a quorum. I'm assuming no public comment, correct?
Yes, we have not received any requests for such either.
All right, good. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Ray has distributed the consent or the agenda, which included 3 items under the consent agenda of the minutes, the financial report and the staff reports. Do any of the commissioners like to pull off any of those items for further discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Tony.
Second.
Carl, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We're now on to the regular agenda, which we did not have any items to do. And so we're on to items for information or discussion. And first up, we have a presentation of the EV Town item. And so, Ray, I'll let you do the introduction.
Yeah, if I may just give a context before I hand the time to Tricia Fassini, who is the co-organizer for the EV Town Steering Committee. We MCRPC, as you know, transportation planning is a core function of the commission, and also because of our relationship in funding from the state and from the federal government. So transportation, anything related is close to us. And EVs, as you all know, not just because we have a major manufacturer of electric vehicle, trucks, vans in our community, but as we look at, there are more people using EVs and for their own personal use, or buses, other vehicles. So as part of the long-range transportation plan that the commission adopted just not too long ago, there's something about renewable energy, if you recall. And so that's just one of the ways to fuel vehicles, to get people and freight, cargoes from point A to point B for different purposes. So, and I learned last year, actually, there's a long history that some of you may know already, but I learned just last year, just the rich history of electric vehicles in our community. So without further ado, Tricia was going to give us a presentation on how that's all about and how really the different level of the impact on the federal, state, local, and there's a lot more funding also from the federal government through the infrastructure bill, bipartisan infrastructure bill. Actually, a lot of money coming down to the state on the local levels, for the infrastructure, to build the infrastructure for EVs. So, Tricia.
Thank you very much, Ray. Appreciate it. Happy to be here. Happy to see you all. Let's go ahead and show the agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about what EV Town is and who it is. Then just give you a really short basics of charging. The focus of today's presentation is on charging infrastructure, because that's really the big issue that's out there. It's the thing that stands in the way of some people acquiring an electric vehicle, but there's also a lot of misinformation, and I'm not going to clear a lot of that up today. I will clear a little bit up, but we do have the flyer that I sent you, or that we dropped off at your place here, where we will be dispelling myths and providing a lot of information about EV ownership. But today it's going to be more about the charging infrastructure. So we're going to start with Bloomington Normal is EV Town. If you've been around for a while, you've probably heard or seen EV Town somewhere, especially back in the 2010s. That's really when the name was coined by the community. There was an EV steering committee at that time made up of very similar organizations and people. And we've kind of re-established that committee. So why were we then, and why are we now, and why will we continue to be EV Town in the future? Let's go next slide. So Ray mentioned the history. There is a lot of history. I also learned a couple years ago when I started this committee from Bill Kemp at the History Museum that the Henny Kilowatt was made by the Eureka Williams vacuum cleaner company here in Bloomington Normal. They made about 47 cars, I think, electric cars. They got about the same range as the Mitsubishi i-Leafs did back in the 2010s, but this was 50 years before that. So that was sort of a beginning of our electric vehicle journey. Mitsubishi, while we didn't manufacture the EVs here in Bloomington Normal, we had a lot of them sold in Bloomington Normal. We had about 200 cars driving around town, and it's kind of like you see the Rivians today around town everywhere. Back in the early 2010s, you saw a lot of i-Leafs, and I had one, my parents had one, just recently traded mine in for a Tesla. So that's a big part of our history. And from today and moving forward, we have Rivian producing the trucks and the SUVs that Ray also mentioned. In addition to producing the vehicles, there's kind of an ecosystem around this. Heartland Community College started an electric vehicle program to train EV technicians back in 2021. And just last week, they opened their Advanced Manufacturing Center and State Farm Electric Vehicle Lab, which is a mouthful, but it's a really cool 48,000 foot facility that's going to do a lot of good training, doing a lot of training for workforce folks who can go out and be EV technicians. There are all kinds of other things that that facility is going to allow them to train people on. And then Tesla is another thing. Back in the 2010s, when we had the Mitsubishi i-Leafs and we became EV town, Tesla located its first superchargers in the whole Midwest in the Uptown parking deck. So that's pretty cool. Outside of California, we were the first to get those superchargers. And then in 2019, they opened a sales and service center that's serving the whole area between Chicago and St. Louis. So those are pretty significant things that indicate that something's going on here in Bloomington Normal or in McLean County. And that's why I would say we're EV town. And that's why I've resurrected the EV Town Steering Committee, because there's a lot going on and a lot of people in the community are really behind what we're doing here and want to make it known that we are on the leading edge. We have committee members from local and state government. We have educational institutions, all the local educational institutions, economic development, environmental interests, the electric utilities are members, and a bunch of other leaders from in and around Bloomington Normal, all of whom support our mission, which is to be a leading community in EV innovation, education, and adoption. Ray and Carl are both members of the committee, so I appreciate them being here and inviting me and being a part of what we're doing here in Bloomington Normal. So now we're going to go on to just a few of the very basic items about EV charging. You may know some of this, you may not. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but we'll go to the next slide. There are three types of chargers. Level 1, which is something you can plug into any standard household outlet. That gets you about 3 to 5 miles of range per hour. Now, when I had an i-Leaf and it only had a 60-mile range, I wasn't going to be going very far anyway, so charging it overnight generally would recharge me, and I seldom used all of that capacity in a day. The average driver only goes 50 to 75 miles a day, and so I was obviously keeping under the 75. But anyway, a level 1 charger is probably sufficient if that's all the range you've got. These days, cars have 200 or 300 miles range, so you probably want to go for something that's going to add more miles per hour, and that would be the level 2 charger. This is something you can have installed by an electrician in your home, and you're going to get 25 to 75 miles per hour on that. The level 3 chargers get all the publicity. Those are the fast chargers, the superchargers. There are several different names for them, and they can get you more or less than about 200 miles per charge. A couple of things to keep in mind about charging is it's not just about the level or the speed of the charger, it's also the capacity and the battery management of the car's battery itself. So different cars can suck in different amounts of energy, and therefore that impacts. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had a question, but finish. I'm sorry.
Okay, it impacts how quickly and how many miles you can get per hour on any given charger, it also depends on your vehicle's energy management system. Yeah, Carl.
Could you do a level 3 charger at home?
I'm guessing that would be very cost prohibitive. I've not heard of anybody doing a level 3 charger at home. The idea with having a home charger, and this is one of the points about that, is it's very simple to charge overnight and really pretty much replenish whatever your range is. It also gives you lots of opportunities for energy management and savings on your electric bill, because both of the utilities here have EV rates where during off-peak hours, they charge you a lot less for electricity. Not only the electricity you use to charge your car, but the electricity you use to do anything else in your house. I saved $193 in December because I had the EV rate, and most of the kilowatts that I used were during the hours between 7 p.m. one day or night and 2 p.m. the next day, because the only hours I'm paying peak rates for are the 5 hours from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. So I saved a whole bunch of money by having that EV rate. Yeah, that's something people don't know. And Ameren has some things that are of benefit. That I have Corn Belt, but Ameren has some things that you can, the net energy credits or something that I'm not as well versed in, but there are benefits if you're an Ameren customer as well. Okay, residential versus fast charging. We've already talked a little bit about this. The average miles per day of somebody is about 75 miles. The new cars have a 200 to 300 mile range. Level 1 and level 2 chargers at home are going to be perfectly sufficient. Even if you have a level 3 charger at home, the idea is you could get further, but you still have to come back home to get that fast charge. So you've got to find other fast chargers along the way anyway. The primary benefit for fast charging is when you're going long distances. So what you're looking for is places en route that are going to give you the ability to boost that charge by a lot. And you can manage that in different ways. You can stop more frequently and just hop off, get yourself another 50 or 75 miles and just hang out there for 20 minutes. Or you can stretch it and kind of go to your limit and then sit there for an hour and get another 200 miles. Your car's app, there are apps on all the cars that will help you determine where and when you need to stop and where there are charges and if they're available, that sort of thing. So there are definitely benefits if you're going to do road trips. You want to look for level 3 charging, but it's not something you need for day to day. For day to day, standard outlets or level 2 chargers are going to be 95% of your in town and around town and around central Illinois type trips. Okay, so that's the basics. Any questions just about those general background pieces of information about charging?
Does the church, I'm sorry, I was looking up. Do the charging stations offer outlets for multiple cars or receptacles for multiple cars?
Most of them do, yes.
Because if it takes an hour and you're on a trip,
Right.
you hardly want to wait for an hour for somebody else to unplug.
So you've got places like Wally's and Pontiac and other travel stop type gas stations that also have multiple chargers. Or if you go to a Walmart store or a Myers store, they're going to have 5 or 10 or more charging ports. So the thing you plug into the car, they call them different things, but I'm going to call them ports. So that or just like when you stick the gas in your car from a gas station, that thing, there are going to be several of those.
And you pay the same way?
You what?
You pay the same way?
No, you would be paying through an application. There is some federal legislation that's trying to make it so that you can just use a debit card or a credit card. But right now, most of those charging stations go through an application, whether it's your Tesla application or you have an EV Go card or one of the other charging infrastructure cards.
So in that case, it would be the car that's measuring the power that you take, not the station.
I don't know enough about it to answer that question.
Let it go, somebody else.
Okay.
I actually thought you were asking the question I was going to ask for a second there. So for the plugs for the EV charging stations, like if it's a Tesla station or whatever, are they universal between different manufacturers?
Not yet. Not yet. My Tesla has an adapter that fits the home charger that I had for my iMe, which has a different type of connection. What's happened in the last 6 months is that Tesla calls their charging port the national, it's NACS, national something charging standard. And what's happened in the last 6 months or so is that Tesla has deals with now all of the major car manufacturers have said, we're going to adopt the NACS port or standard. What most of the car makers are going to do is they're going to offer adapters to their existing EV owners that will fit in a Tesla charger. And when they start making new EVs in 2025, maybe some of them at the end of 2024, they will have the Tesla types of ports in there. But it's amazing how quickly it became the standard because Tesla's always had the most charging stations in the country. They set up their infrastructure along with the cars that they were selling. And they were the only ones that had that model. Rivian was doing something similar, but doesn't have nearly as many chargers yet. So immediately when you can go to your dealership and get an adapter, right now most of them are offering the adapters free. At some point they might start charging for them. But once you have that adapter, you all of a sudden probably have 5 times as many chargers that you have access to because you have that adapter. You can use a Tesla station in addition to any of the other types of stations.
So another question then. For these charging stations, are they kind of like gas stations where the prices fluctuate day to day, or is it like pretty much a standard rate typically?
I think right now they are a standard rate. I've seen some articles about possibly, surge pricing so that, during times when they're used more, they're going to charge more. As far as I know, if you go to one station and you go there a different day, it's going to be the same rate. Now, this station might have a different rate than the one a couple blocks down the road. And I think most of that information is in whether you have a PlugShare app or your car's app. I'm pretty sure they say what the rate is per kilowatt hour or whatever it is they're measuring. Did you have a question?
Weather, what's weather?
Weather definitely has an impact. So in addition to how much energy your battery can consume, there is the weather factor. And yes, if you saw what was going on in Chicago in, I think it was early February when it was so cold, you don't get as much range. Your battery, for one thing, needs to be kind of warmed up before you charge. So when you plug in on a really, really cold day, part of it's just what it's doing first is sucking in energy to warm up the battery and not adding range. And then it takes longer to add the range, and it takes less time to use up the range when you're driving. So my iMe that would normally get 60 to 70 miles on a charge on a cold day, the minute I took it off the charger and started driving, the range went down to 45 or 50. So you lose range when it's colder out, and it doesn't charge as quickly as well. I think they're doing some things with battery technology that might slightly alleviate that. I don't think they've solved that problem. And in cold or hot weather, if you are using your air conditioning or your heater, that will also reduce the range.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Curious cost per unit, approximately 1 mile gas to pay for 1 mile of charge.
I don't have that information, but there are, and I don't know if Ameren still has it, but there are utility websites that will give you a comparison of different vehicles and how much, what the comparison is to help you decide whether you're ready to buy an EV. It'll give you that sort of information. I don't know that off the top of my head. Okay.
Sorry, one more.
Yeah, that's fine.
So for the level 3 stations in particular, that are drawing a lot more energy, putting more of a strain on the electrical supply. Is there consideration given to like where these go to be in newer infrastructure areas? They're not like trying to draw from 100-year-old electrical systems?
I would imagine the people who plan those things probably do take that into consideration. I thought you were going to the concerns about the grid being able to handle all of this.
It's part of it.
And that's one of those myths that we're going to overpower the grid. I know in California, where they have millions of EVs, their electric grid stability is not being impacted by all of those charging. And part of the reason is most charging, and not necessarily with the level 3 chargers, but home charging, of course, is mostly going to be done overnight when there aren't a lot of other electrical things consuming it. But I think that's a really good point, that's really got to be planned where you install those, and that probably makes it more difficult in rural communities and small towns and underserved areas and things like that. It's going to make it more difficult to put a level 3 charger in those types of places. So something for a planning commission, definitely. So I'm going to, fortunately, I got several more slides, but we've already hit a lot of the points, so we'll be able to move fairly quickly, I think, through some of this. Let's go talk about the EV charging in McLean County. We have about 150 ports in 50 different locations. So that goes to the question about how many plugs do you have in each station. So it looks like an average of 3 plugs, but because we have a lot of places in Bloomington Normal that just have one, a parking lot will have one. There's a parking lot just out here that has 1 or 2 out there. But when you go to the big retail locations and you go to the parking decks, there are hotels. Hotels don't have usually multiple, but the parking decks and retail locations will often have 10 or 12 different plugs. Of those 150 ports, of the 50 stations, about more than half of them are free of charge. They're not, you don't pay anything. I don't know if the host, whoever, whether it's the government or the hotel or the parking garage is paying for it, but we don't pay for it in our parking decks. And some of them you have to pay to get into the parking deck, but you don't have to pay to charge. So it all just depends on the situation. We have we have around 40 fast chargers or superchargers in town, and those are things like at the Meyer, wherever you see the Tesla superchargers, that's where most of these come from. I thought it was interesting to note that Bloomington Normal is the 3rd friendliest EV city in Illinois, and that's purely by the number of charging stations. They classify Chicago, Elgin, and Naperville as one area. So they're, of course, number 1. They have 3,000 plus charging stations. Springfield has about 8 more charging stations than Bloomington. So that's why we're number 3. And these numbers change pretty often. There are a lot of new charging stations going up with all of the infrastructure funding that's out there. So I imagine that'll change, but we're obviously in the top ranks in Illinois. Let's see, in my work with the Regional Planning Commission, the estimate that we got back in October was that McLean County needs about 750 charging ports. And right now, like we said, we have about 150. So clearly we need to up our game a little bit. And of those, about 1/3 of them should be fast chargers, just according to the statistics and analysis that was done on here.
About how much of those are in town?
About 99% of them. I think there's one in Lexington.
The need.
Oh, the need.
Yeah.
Let's see, we've got a map coming up, but I don't know if it talks about the charging stations or EV ownership.
Okay.
Does that 746 take into account those that are in homes or?
No, I think these are public charging stations.
Available.
Yeah, pretty sure they are. So let's go on to the challenges. And this is when Ray talked to me about this, what he mentioned was, let's hear a little bit about the challenges with the charging infrastructure. So the challenge here is the number of chargers and the fact that we need more. The good news is, and Ray alluded to this earlier, there are a lot of federal funding, federal and state grants and credits available for communities to use toward bringing in new EV charging infrastructure, in repairing the existing. Most of the the charging infrastructure in Bloomington Normal is 10 years old, except, you know, the superchargers and new things that we've gotten recently aren't. But they came about in 2010, 2011, 2012 when we had all those I-needs around. So they're pretty old, and a lot of them are on their last legs or not working. So there is funding available for repairs to those. All right, this is the map I was talking about, and it is the location of chargers. If you're familiar with, I mean, you can see the ring around the interstates and things like that. The shaded area there is the underserved communities, disadvantaged communities, shaded in gray. And there's definitely a lack of charging infrastructure in those spaces. You see a few scattered, but you also see how scattered they are, just the small numbers around the outside of Bloomington Normal proper. Some of the grant money is specifically targeting those low-income communities and underserved areas. So hopefully people will be applying for that fund. People, organizations, businesses will be applying for some of that funding to get charging into those underserved areas. And we're also going to talk about multifamily dwellings, but not quite yet, because that's not just a Bloomington Normal issue, that's a nationwide issue. So now we're going to talk about Illinois a little bit. Okay, to meet the end, the governor says he wants to have 1 million EVs in Illinois by 2030. We have almost 100,000, it's 96,000 something right now. So that's a factor of 10. He wants to multiply what we've got by 10. Now we have a fairly decent start on the number of chargers. I don't have that on here. Oh yeah, we have about 3,300 level 2 public chargers, and really level 2 is kind of the sweet spot. It's something you can use at home and something that can be of some benefit if you're on the road as well. Or if you're, you know, at Hy-Vee doing your grocery shopping, you're going to be in there for half an hour, so you could get yourself another 25 miles just doing your grocery shopping. So about a little over 3,000 level 2 chargers and about 1,000 fast chargers in the state. And you can see from this, we need to have a lot more than that. We're going to need about 7,000 fast chargers and 36,000 public charging ports. That's not stations, that's individual ports. These are the estimates that we've seen. So next, the gap, obviously there's a gap between 3,000 some and 36,000, so we need to increase that. Again, I've said several times, there's a lot of funding available. There is $15 million. This is what Illinois has access to and has secured, I guess. We've got $15 million from the federal charging and fueling infrastructure grant program. We have 100, and that's for constructing, that grant's going to fund the construction of 881 charging stations. We've got 148 million from 2022 to 2027 from the National EV Infrastructure Program to build a network of chargers along the highways. So those something corridors, transportation corridors, I think. That's what that 148 million is for over the next 4 years. There's $7 million in funding through the U.S. Department of Transportation's Federal Highway Administration Electric Vehicle Charger Reliability and Accessibility Accelerator Program. $27 million from Illinois EPA grants to build fast charging stations at public locations like hotels, shopping centers, and gas stations. So lots of different funding pools focused on different things. That's one of the positives of charging in Illinois. Also, we have an EV Charging Act that requires new homes and multifamily dwellings to be built with the basic electrical infrastructure to support EV charging. That doesn't mean there will be chargers there, but they'll have the ability to install chargers. It'll be set up in the infrastructure. The state's providing up to 80% of the cost of public and private organizations to install and maintain charging stations. And Senator Kaler has sponsored a bill in the Illinois Senate to establish a clean transportation center standard, which to reduce carbon intensity from the on-road transportation sector. So obviously, some of that money could go toward things that encourage EVs and EV charging infrastructure. Nationwide, now I've got to tell you, my focus has been much more local than nationwide, so this is just some internet research that I tackled a little bit here. Some of this is from President Biden's plans for the infrastructure. We have currently about 170,000 charging ports across the country, 900 new ones opening each week, and his goal is 500,000 charging ports by 2030. Some of the challenges in the United States are the non-homeowners access to charging. Renters and those living in multifamily dwellings have more challenges having a reliable source of charging because they don't have a garage, they don't have a place where they can plug their vehicle in until it becomes the norm to have public charging at these types of places. Now, new construction, there is a law that new construction has, and we've talked about that for Illinois anyway, new construction has to set up for that. But we need to have charging sooner than that and for established multifamily dwelling places. So that's something that needs to be worked on. The bipartisan infrastructure law does provide funding to address that inequity, and that will help us out with existing multifamily dwellings. Some positives, we already talked about the universal standard charging ports that are becoming much more widespread and available, the multiple funding streams. We already talked about all of those. Okay, so in conclusion, certainly there are challenges that exist at all levels. And while governments are currently actively seeking to meet the needs of the charging infrastructure through funding and other encouragements, that's not the long-term solution. I believe the responsibility for building out our EV charging infrastructure must expand beyond government programs and funding. As demand increases, businesses and public-private partnerships must pitch in to fill the needs of their employees, their customers, and the driving public. Once commercial charging providers develop a profitable business model, I think the infrastructure will expand to sufficiently meet the demand. So there's got to be a tipping point at some point where the government is no longer the driver, but private enterprise is the driver to drive more charging infrastructure. There's also an interesting alternative. I read something that Australia is doing. They want policymakers to consider making charging infrastructure a public utility to make it more equitably available across the board. So that's an interesting concept, and that's the first time I heard something like that suggested. And I don't know that there's anything like that being discussed here in the United States. But that's kind of my wrap of what I know about local and statewide and nationwide charging infrastructure, and why I think Bloomington Normal is EV town and can be a leader in some of these areas that we're talking about, and building out infrastructure and accessing funding to make the charging infrastructure more widely available.
Thanks, Tricia. Any questions? Tricia?
Yeah,
Please go ahead.
Okay.
Curious, you talked about the statewide grants that are coming. So when that money is put towards charging stations, who owns those facilities? I'm guessing the Public Works in most of these cases. And then is it a pay to use? Is there a profit? Who takes the profit? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it could go many different ways. One way that it is shifting somewhat to private enterprise is there are charging networks like ChargePoint that they install chargers. Now, I don't know how they work with the businesses they're installing them at, or the government entities. They install the chargers. They're responsible for the maintenance. They get the proceeds from it. So that's one way to do it. I think most of the single chargers around Bloomington Normal have been government funded, and I don't know who. I guess the government's paying for the electricity is what's happening in those instances. But if you have, like the Marriott has charging stations, I imagine they're fronting the bill and they're not charging 30 cents per kilowatt.
Specifically the ones for the grants.
Oh, the grants?
Yeah.
I don't know what the restrictions or the parameters are on them. I know they're trying to encourage public-private partnership, but I don't know the business model for how they get installed and who's responsible for paying and maintaining those kinds of things. I don't know the answer to that.
And then one more question, and I ask this out of complete respect. Can you go into your background? I'm curious as to your qualifications, your interest in this field.
Okay.
I didn't gain that from the.
Sure. No, yeah, because I don't have any technical qualifications whatsoever. I started this whole path because I believe Bloomington Normal is something special in the world of EVs. I really loved my iNEV, driving that around. I'm getting used to my Tesla. It's a lot different, has a lot more features, and some of them are hard to get to, but I don't have any qualifications. This is stuff I've learned over the last 2 years. We restarted the committee almost exactly 2 years ago, and we've been kind of developing what we want to do. We want to educate people. That's one. We want to make Bloomington Normal known for what we are, EV town, and a leader in innovation, education, and adoption of EVs. So my day job, I'm a technology product analyst in the innovation department at State Farm, but that has virtually nothing to do with what I'm doing here. This is just something I was very interested in, and something that I think I can help the community get some credit for some things and give back.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and Tricia, this is the EV Town idea was an outgrowth of the Town of Normal's initiative back in 2010 when Mitsubishi was first selling cars here in town.
And the city was all in, the town was all in, providing tax credits and having educational events and drive-ins and different things like that. And we're kind of trying to mimic and resurrect that a little bit.
Yeah. So do you want to mention about this?
Oh, sure. A week from Saturday, we are having an educational event and exhibit in ED Town Hall at the History Museum. We're going to have a number of speakers. You don't see Rivian listed, but I think we have secured a speaker from Rivian as well as Tesla. The panel will each talk for a few minutes about their interest in this whole thing, greenhouse gas emissions or the electric buses or the different things that are going on. Then it will open for questions. We intend this to be an educational event. And then from 3 to 4, we will have some electric vehicles, including one of the Connect Transit electric buses outside of the History Museum that people not drive, but can look at and, I don't know, maybe sit in and the owners will be around. I'll have my car there. So if you have questions about how this works or what that does, that sort of thing, we can talk to you about that. But everybody is welcome. There will be refreshments served. This is actually put together by the Multicultural Leadership Association project team, program project team that is working. Ray was kind enough to let MCRPC submit an application to get a project team from MCLP, and that team has been working very hard to put this event together. We have a cool educational video which will be premiered at the event and then available afterwards on various websites and things like that, but do some more EV myth busting and education. So I hope to see you there.
Good. Well, thank you, Tricia. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yep, good evening.
Yeah, thank you. If I may just add one more thing really quick, questions from Stanley regarding the grant. King County was recently was included in a recently award on some kind of EV type grants from the state or from the Fed to the state. Through the Illinois Finance Authority. IDA also has a separate grant that they got. So the county administration was part of that grant application that was included with the Illinois Finance Authority. Details don't know yet because it's all through the administration, but then also want to learn more. But just so you know, also with Clean County, we see all part of that grant award that was recently announced by the federal government.
Thank you, Ray. We're now on to the Regional Housing Initiative update from Mark. Mark.
So for local updates, start off with Regional Housing Initiative Housing Staff Meeting
took place last month, and we are working on wrapping up our annual update to the Housing Data Dashboard. That is something we do annually for the benefit of local nonprofits and for internal purposes as well. We also attended the Housing Assistance Coalition meeting for data advocacy and awareness to discuss the periodic report that will be released to the public here very soon through United Way of McLean County and Prairie State Legal Services. And we also met with the City, Town, and Bloomington Housing Authority staff on the consolidated plan for updates on the citizen participation plans and next steps for the community feedback surveys. On the RISE, or Regional Housing Recovery Plan, MCRPC staff released the draft Regional Housing Recovery Plan on February 29th, just last week, and we have our public review comment period open until March 14th. We also have some flyers up there. You feel free to take any if you'd like. It's just a simple QR code. People can leave their comments on that form there. The steering committee met on February 20th, and our next meeting is on the 14th. And we discussed last time key recommendations and strategies, and next we'll discuss feedback. MCRPC staff distributed the draft Regional Housing Recovery Plan to various public libraries in McLean County as well, including Leroy, Lexington, Hayworth, Towanda, Hudson, Carlick, Normal, and Bloomington. And also public review comments can be submitted on the form, which I've already said. And we will look at how we're going to incorporate that in the plan. And last but not least, we attended the annual Illinois Housing Council's Affordable Housing Forum in Chicago, which was fantastic. We heard about state and federal updates on legislation and different programs that are on the rise. So on the rise.
Okay, and I think Ray has included a copy of the draft plan to all the commissioners, and I would encourage you to take some time to review that and provide any feedback to Ray or Mark that you might have on the report.
How many comments have been received so far? I know we have 8 more days, but.
Yes, 8 actually. Yeah, we've received 8 comments, and we have what's today, the 6th, so we have about a week left. Yeah, that's been really successful, just getting the word out. We've had some really good feedback, and if you're curious just to see what a hard copy looks like, there's one up there. But trying to see paper, so. Yeah.
Okay, any questions for Mark? All right. Now we're on to the Human Services Transportation Plan, and Francesca.
Okay.
Guess I'll stand over here so you can see me. All right. Oh, I need this keyboard. Here we go. So we briefly discussed the HSTP our last commission meeting, but as a reminder, the HSTP stands for the Human Services Transportation Plan. So MCRPC is the designated program coordinator for Region 6. And Region 6 includes Ford, Iroquois, Livingston, Kankakee, and McLean counties. So this is a project that is funded by IDOT, and the goal is to identify transportation needs for seniors, veterans, individuals with disabilities, and individuals with low income, and create strategies to address those needs. So our ongoing work, we are currently in the process of updating the HSTP plan document. The last time it was updated was August of 2015. So we are working on that. We are also finishing up our program reviews of the participating agencies that are involved in the process, and always ongoing is the facilitation of our Region 6 and Transportation Advisory Joint Committees. And that committee meets monthly, and they discuss the needs of their clients, the transportation needs, and they also discuss coordination between the agencies and what they can do to better serve their clients. So in the update for our plan, we completed a needs analysis that looked at some demographic and mapping variables, and we conducted analysis to see where are the areas with the most need in the whole region. We also incorporated stakeholder focus group input from our MLRTP update, The last update was just a few years ago. And then we are in the process of analyzing survey data from our community member survey and then the transportation provider survey that was released in February and just closed on March 1st. So we're just getting started on that. And then upcoming, related to the plan, we are going to be hosting a virtual town hall forum. It's just going to be another community engagement opportunity for people to share about their transportation experiences or what they need more help with and more of their needs. Just another opportunity to participate. So the anticipated approval of the plan is the end of April, and that will be our Region 6 Policy Committee will approve that. There we go. All right, and then the last thing I'll mention here is our program reviews of the participating agencies. So not all agencies are involved in this, only the agencies who receive a vehicle through the 5310 CVP or Consolidated Vehicle Program, which is a IDOT funded program to give agencies vehicles that are accessible to serve seniors and individuals with disabilities. So we visited 5 locations to do these vehicle inspections and the whole program review. So Jennifer leads that, but Tanya and I both attended some of those to learn about the process, and that is one of the buses we actually inspected. And then the inside, we had them all checking for all of their safety equipment and other things that need to be up to maintenance and standards for the vehicles. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Questions? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Now on Division 0.
Just really quick, the RFP, request for proposal for the race plan, that's the Veterans Parkway Replanning Grant. We have received the feedback on our draft RFP, so we should be ready to issue that very soon, so that to get responses from the consultant. So that's just, it's taken a little bit longer than expected, but it was just so, as you can see, with so much going on, with the staff projects working on, but that's very close for us to issue that RFP. So that is a major project, as you understand. We plan, we imagine the whole 10-mile stretch of Veterans Parkway.
Thank you. And now on to that which may arise. I was going to mention, if you remember at our last meeting, we talked about moving our April meeting into March for approval. And so that March meeting is at March 27th at 4 o'clock in this very location. So please note your calendars accordingly as you can. I also would like to acknowledge that Ronnie Lesser joined us on video or Zoom, I should say. So thank you for coming, Ronnie, or participating, I should say. So are there any other topics that need to come before the commission before we close?
If I just piggyback on the special meeting, March 27th, in addition to the housing plan that we will be asking for your consideration of adoption, we will also have for you to consider is the bylaws amendment that I mentioned before. We did receive a request or proposal suggestion for some amendments. So we'll take that to the executive committee. 3 of you serve on that committee. So you've been getting an email from me. It'll give you a few days time to pick from, basically looking at some days and times for the next couple of weeks. And so that will be in time for us to take the recommendation from the executive committee to the full planning commission. So just to give you a heads up.
Okay. All right. Any other issues that need to come before the commission today? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Responsible for that.